Hello, this is Hannah Fairbairn and welcome. This is the second video about my book, When You Can't Believe Your Eyes, Vision Loss and Personal Recovery, published 2019 by Charles C. Thomas. It's available in print and in 3 accessible versions. If you go to the book page on my blog, which is called also Vision Loss and Personal Recovery.com, you can see how to access the version that suits you best. So the first video was about how the book came to be written, my work at the Carroll Center for the Blind outside Boston, my own vision loss, and all the people, both those going through vision loss and lots of different kinds of professionals who contributed so greatly to the accuracy and wide range of the book. So I do urge you to watch or listen to that video first. This one, as I say, is about part 1, and I'm going to concentrate a lot on the themes of the book rather than too many details about the book itself, which I think would get pretty boring. So part 1 is called Believing the Unbelievable, Facing the Trauma of Vision Loss at the Hospital and Back Home. And it has only 2 chapters. In fact, the whole book is pretty concise, but the 2 chapters contain 27 short sections. So what I'm hoping is you can get to the section that most meets your needs at that moment pretty fast and get the information you need. And at the end of the book, there's also a huge resource list for your, so that you can get to that kind of information too. So part 1, you may think, especially if you have quite gradual sight loss, that this is not a traumatic event. The word trauma may seem weird and inappropriate to you, but I wanted to encourage you to think about what's happening in that way. Excuse me. Because even if your vision loss takes several decades to become acute, and with some conditions it does, this is a traumatic event. It affects how you feel about yourself, the way you live, the kind of job you have, all kinds of things. And so what I'm saying is you have to take it really seriously, because when you have time to do stuff about it, to, maybe you have some years before it becomes acute, then this is the time to make changes, not to ignore it. And I'm afraid that ignoring it is something that people do. So I'm hoping that you're not one of them. So there are 6 or 7 major themes of the book, and one of them comes up right away in chapter 1, and it is getting the best. Chapter 1 is called The Shock and the Docs, and it's about getting the diagnosis and so on. And I do strongly encourage you, with everything about your vision loss, to work to get the very best, to work to get to the situation or the doctor or the therapist or the whatever that absolutely works for you. Do not lie down under this, as it were. This is too important. I remember when I was first going through sudden vision loss myself, and I thought, this is too important to get depressed about, and this is too important to get depressed about. So please work to get to the best ophthalmologist you possibly can, not your local person necessarily, but a big city, maybe attached to a university would be good, where you get a range of treatments, specialists, consultants, so that you can find someone who takes your insurance, of course, but also who will give you very good advice. And then you get a second opinion. so that you get a very solid diagnosis. So this takes a lot of work, of course, and may involve getting somebody to drive you quite a distance, but I can't tell you how worth it is to get the very best care for your eyes. So you choose the treatment and surgery that would work best for you. So that's one section. There's a list of questions to ask the doctor and ways that you could access the list at the appointment. There's also, this is all chapter 1, there's also a section on what legal blindness is, what you can do to prevent certain diseases or at least slow them down. And then there's also sections on trying to guard your general health while you're going through all this. A second one of the major themes comes up even in this first chapter, which is that you need to take charge of your own life, not allow a family member, a partner, a friend, a helper to take over, especially at the eye appointment and in decisions afterwards. It's your voice that needs to be heard. Becoming passive and letting people who see well take decisions for you is really quite dangerous to your self-esteem and in the long run to your ability to get back to what I'm sure you're aiming for, which is adult competency and a satisfying life. So again, that's a second theme, is taking charge yourself. That's more or less chapter 1. It's mostly about medical issues, not entirely, and it ends up with a little section on when to stop searching for a cure, because some people just go round and round getting more and more doctors' opinions, and not moving on. And of course, you should keep up with your medical care, go and see your ophthalmologist regularly, but then at a certain point, you need to move on to see a low vision specialist and then into low vision rehabilitation therapy. So chapter 2 is called Back at Home. And the first section of this was really the one I found most difficult to write, because it's about the financial hit that many, many people take after vision loss. And so it details ways in which you could get a bit of income support, including, if you're employed, taking short-term disability, which is correctly called the Family and Medical Leave Act, which is it gives you 12 weeks. And in fact, at the moment, this is not funded, but right now in Congress, they're debating whether or not this should be funded so that you get some income during this time. Other forms of income are also discussed, as are possible housing options down the road. A lot of people move in with family members when they first lose sight, both to save money and to get the extra support they need when driving and reading in an easy way become difficult. But you want to think about further down the road from that, housing options. I think actually in chapter 1, there's a what's called a senior guy in what's known as vocational counseling in one of the big commissions for people who've lost sight or were born with blindness. And he recommends very much that you do not do things in a rushed way, that you don't make any changes about your housing or your job or anything until you've got advice, you've got support from family, cousins, whoever, brothers, sisters, parents, and then also got some professional advice, maybe from an accountant, or you might need an employment disability employment lawyer or a social worker, and then later, when you're ready, low vision rehabilitation specialists. So do take advice before you make any decisions. There's this feeling when you first lose sight, especially if it's fast, as mine was, that there's a hurricane suddenly happening and you want to go somewhere else. But the best way is to get support from your family and then take clear, well thought out decisions. So Chapter 2 continues with all these short sections. One is called Helpful Equipment, and it's about lighting and various other ways to make sure that you adapt your home a bit so that it works well for you. There's also a section on safety and on changing home arrangements to make it so that you can move freely within your home. This is very important. You don't want to get stuck so that you can't move about and do things. There's some simple stuff about getting back to preparing food for yourself, and there's also a mention, but not as much as I would now say, now 2 years later that I've talked to lots of people and lots of groups, of the importance of having a little team of people who are helping you through the first months and years if your sight loss has become so you're not driving and not reading easily. It very often happens that people just have one person who's helping them, their spouse, their daughter, a paid helper, whoever it is, and that person can get very burdened. There's a shocking number of people who've written on my blog following an article called Dealing with Sight Loss in Your Partner, Parent, or Best Friend. And they all are kind of overwhelmed and burdened and so stressed by trying to take care of their own lives as well as taking care of their partners' lives. It's nearly all partners who've written. So it makes a big difference if you add in one or two more people. So not just your partner, but also maybe your cousin or your sister or your closest friend who takes on one aspect of your care. This is not going to be permanent. This is just to get you through a certain difficult time until you begin to learn alternative methods and get good at it. And this chapter ends with advice from someone who lost his sight, I'm afraid, very violently in his 40s. He was attacked. And he says it's going to take help from everybody, not only medical help, not only vision rehabilitation therapy, but friends, counselors, maybe a psychotherapist, maybe a psychiatrist, everything you can imagine and more to get you back to feeling like yourself again, a fully competent adult who is a solid member of her household and works to give herself, or has already given herself, a satisfying life. So that opens up, I hope, part 1 to you, and I do hope that you will read the book yourself, but at least this is a little bit of an intro. So part 2 will be coming soon. Very best wishes to you all. Goodbye.